come across someone that you feel is kind of in a danger zone in terms of going down, mixing with the wrong crowd and getting dangerous ideas or whatever else, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it, if you try and boil it down to like the psychology of it, a lot of it is deeper issues like traumatized past and stuff. Oftentimes there's a big transformation involved where they've suddenly decided that they want to become the best practicing Muslim that they can, right? So they
Yeah.
suddenly jump ship, and there's a massive identity change in it. So they suddenly
Yeah.
become the practicing guy. They
Yeah.
suddenly become the guy that's like, you know, visibly the Muslim guy, and he's going to be strict in everything. That causes a massive kind of psychological crisis for them. But in a way, I think it's the same appeal to get rich quick schemes.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. Because Assalamu alaikum all, and welcome to another episode of the Optimized Muslim podcast. Welcome to the Optimized Muslim new and improved set. And today it's a bit of a different
Just a question on
podcast.
if it's a podcast. I mean, sorry, bye.
If it's a podcast, then what?
I mean, isn't it predominantly audio? So I mean, talking about your new set on a primarily audio platform.
Sorry, I forgot to do the double screen all that time.
All right.
So I was just talking
You're
to
just talking
some
to yourself.
invisible person. But
Yeah.
anyway, as everyone's probably already noticed, this one's a bit more relaxed, a bit more informal. So there's going to be a bit more kind of freedom. In a way, you might see that I'm speaking to him in a different manner compared to the normal guests. That's not because I'm a bully and you can like create a dossier against me and report it in 20 years time, but it's more just because we've known each other for about 10 years. So there's that level of freedom. But inshallah, as with the theme of the project, it's not just a dilly-dally chat. Inshallah, you come away with something of benefit. So introducing the topic, this one is particularly directed to maybe young Muslims, those heading towards university or in the earlier stages of their career. And the reason for that is we're going to be focusing on joining Islamic societies, or MSAs, I think they're called in America, the benefits of that, the reasons behind doing that, what good can come out of it, and then also the transition from that into careers, and just the different topics along those lines. And we've got a guest, his name's Ameer Khan, and he's someone that I've known for 10 years, like I said, because we both went to university together. And he was actually the president of the ISOC, and he was actually the president of the ISOC, and I was also part of that team as vice president. So there's a shared history there, and I think perfect guest to kind of have on, because now we're 6 or 7 years removed from that university time. So we can talk about it from a more of a mature perspective, and hopefully the younger people that are watching, they can get some benefit from that. And we're also going to try and touch on like deeper topics that arise, things like, I don't know, potential extremism, or just different issues that you have to deal with in that environment. And also something, if we've got enough time, but we'll see how it goes, career choices. Because now Ameer, he's taken a rather unconventional career route for Asians, I'd say, that of a journalist. Just how he navigated that path, dealt with the pressures, and stayed committed to what his goal was, rather than kind of giving up along the way, and how now he's managed to end up in a role that he always wanted to be in. So getting the conversation started, then Ameer, first of all, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
So when you first went to university, right?
Yeah.
Were you aware of ISOCs and whatnot before going to university?
I wasn't aware. No. I'll be honest. I think no. I wasn't aware of Islamic societies, and just in generally as well. I think my knowledge of religion was very sort of one-dimensional. I know I mentioned, like, I've been, to honest with you, like I went to mosque after. So you do your masjid after class,
Yeah.
after school. So you have your 2 hours there, and you learn your deen, you learn Quran and whatever. But it wasn't until I went to a retreat when I was in sixth form that I found out about the four imams, so the four madhabs, Hanafi, Thingy, Shafi,
Yeah.
and just about knew the Sunni and Shia difference. And it wasn't until uni, and then I think until I met you guys, I found out actually, Deobandis are a thing, Barelvis are a thing, and just why the knowledge of Islam, and part of that sort of awakening was Islamic societies and about all about that. And that's a bit off topic, but I think one of the reasons why I think I sought out the Islamic Society or got to know about it as well was we went to university in Hull.
Yeah.
In terms of diversity, it wasn't very diverse. So in terms of finding other like-minded people, I guess we were lucky in terms of we lived together. There's a few other brothers as well, but in terms of getting a wider sort of social circle, Islamic Society was the only way. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess for the first couple of years, for the first year, I wasn't involved, right? And then,
No, I don't think any of us were.
yeah.
Not in our first year.
But
I
what
think
I'm trying to get, yeah, go on.
no, I was saying, so like in our first year as well. I think we went to the sort of the icebreaker sessions, because you sort of go there because you go to meet new people, I guess, and that's the sort of when you start at university, you go to your sort of freshers week fair, where all the societies are there, they're all recruiting, and that's where you find out about Islamic Society. That's where we found out about Islamic Society. And we were told to go to the icebreaker, so we did that. But then throughout the year, because I think as well we lived a bit far away from the university, so we weren't involved in going to these events and going to this sort of stuff. Although I think Saj did. So one of our other housemates, he used to go a fair bit. But in our first year, we weren't really involved at all. Only in like the big events, I think. So the charity week dinner, and the elections at the end of the year, and that was it.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely something that people should do. Muslims that are going to university. But the thing is, I'm debating whether or not to go into it that much, because I don't know whether a young Muslim would watch this and decide on the basis of this that they're going to get involved with it. That's the intention, but I don't already know, because the thing is, when you're younger, you don't really
Yeah.
see things from that perspective. Now
No.
some people do. When you're there, you think this will benefit me because of all those reasons. You're involved in the deen, meeting different people, also building skills,
Yeah.
networking, things like that. But
Yeah.
and also other general life skills, like organizing events,
Yeah.
public speeches, things
Yeah.
like that. They all kind of come to bear
I
years
think as
later.
well that's quite interesting, because so I think it would be fair to say, if I'm being candid, my deen hasn't always been great. I mean, compared, if we're doing a comparison, I think between me and you were more involved in ISOC for the deen aspect for it and for that, whereas I was there for the more practical skills, I guess. I think that would be a fair assessment to make. I think, I'll be honest, like the reason I think I did well as president and was president, I guess, was more because of the practical skills, was because I was good at the public speaking, I was good at the organizing events, I was good at sort of organizing people in a way, sort of, so that we can get stuff done. But in terms of leading the tarbiyah classes, in terms of talking about stuff or talking at events and sort of having that deen aspect, that was always you. I always went to you and said, can you do this, can you do that, because my knowledge wasn't up there. And I
Yeah, but
think
then
as
again,
well, it
mine
would.
wasn't really either. That's what I wanted
No,
to
it
get at
wasn't.
though as
But
well,
it was,
because look,
again, you had that mindset where Dean was your main aim. It was, and it was better than mine.
this I wanted to talk about this because look, it's hard because it's not an ideal world. So say if I was thinking
No.
of choosing the best committee to kind of lead forward the Muslim community, right?
Yeah.
In an ideal world, you would have people who have like fundamental knowledge of Islam basics and stuff. This I wanted to talk about this because look, it's hard because it's not an ideal world. So say if I was thinking
No.
of choosing the best committee to kind of lead forward the Muslim community, right?
Yeah.
In an ideal world, you would have people who have like fundamental knowledge of Islam basics and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
they have somewhat of an activist mindset, because then
Yeah.
you'll get the balance of kind of both things. Um,
Yeah.
what we find is like it's normally one or the other, isn't it? And then that's what
Yeah.
kind of
I
leads
think
to
that's true.
problems.
If you look at the history of our ISOC, so if you look at just a few years before us, president, yeah. So the year before me, there was another president, and he was sort of 100% like he was on Dean. He knew stuff. He had that sort of mindset, and he was great. It was really good. But you could see in terms of the ISOC as an organization didn't perform as well. The dean was there; it was very strong. I think the Tarbiyah classes were really good. The lectures were really good. The Jummas were really good. Everything was good in that aspect. But as an organization, in terms of getting members involved, having that outreach, I guess it wasn't that good because it's over. And part of it was because of his degree, and obviously that took up a lot of his time. Because as well, at the end of the day, we're students. We were students at that time. Islamic society isn't the be all and end all of your thing. It's just one aspect of your life while you're at university. It's not everything. Your studies come first. Deen, in terms of going to praying your salah and doing all that stuff, comes as well. That's there. The Islamic society is
Yeah,
just a lesser aspect of everything.
yeah,
And I think that's one thing you need to keep in mind at all times as well. You can't let it overtake you, and you don't have to have that sort of, oh, it's going to be your be all and end all. It's not. It's just one small aspect of life there. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the years before us, great in terms of Dean, but in terms of organizational, and the ISOC suffered, as you saw. Like our second year, we were there. We were struggling for members. We had about 10 members, and we had to sort of rush people to get
yeah.
members so that we can stay a society.
Yeah, okay. Well, then to that extent, it matters,
Yeah,
because I think you preemptively addressed what I was going to say, because to the extent of being a functioning society, it matters. But then there's that question of whether or not what's more important.
yeah,
It's not
that's
just
true.
about the numbers and stuff. It's more about
No,
because if you're viewing it from like that perspective of like numbers and organization and stuff, but then what about if you're viewing it from a metric that's harder to pinpoint, like I don't
that's
know, the
it.
effect on the people's hearts or something, right? So even if you have a small group of 10 people,
Yeah,
they might have left that with more kind of insight or
yeah,
lifelong practices, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
it
No,
depends
definitely.
what metrics you're using to assess it, isn't it? Which I
Yeah,
think
and I think no, no, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, I think Muslim kind of organizations, they suffer from that in all domains because it's that balance, whether it's
That's it.
mosque committees, whether
Yeah,
it's kind of a project like say this one or any other podcast or whatever else,
yeah,
right? It's that balance between the
yeah.
metrics, what you're prioritizing and things like that.
Yeah,
All right.
and I think you're right in terms of, so if you go back a few years before the sort of the very strict, and not strict but sort of very active on Dean, you had the complete opposite where it was very numbers based, and it became more of a cultural Pakistani society, as it were, rather than the Islamic society, because it was more pandering to get as many people involved, and you lost all semblance of Dean then. So you had that, then you had the overcorrection, I guess. But
Yeah.
then as a result, I think what it came to us as well, and I think I did focus on numbers a fair bit because of external pressures with our prayer room and etc. But I think we did try to build a balance, which I think did succeed over the coming years. Because then, if you look at the 2-3 years afterwards, after our time, I think we left it in a good place.
Yeah. That's important as well. Like a form of a legacy
Make it
afterwards, isn't
much
it?
more employable because there's benefits so much. Because it's not. I think one of the things as well with our society, with our Islamic society, was because we had such a strong foreign student contingent from the Middle East. There was a lot of community outreach and a lot of community work as well that we had to do. So it wasn't just sort of working within our society and working. We went to schools, We went to police stations. We were speaking to them about sort of the culture and about Islam and about stuff like that. If there was, I remember one thingy, one of the brothers, he lost his child. So in terms of getting him in contact, because he's a foreign student, he doesn't know the practice, he doesn't know how to sort of sort out a janaza, and it's things like that where you have to be you're the step in, your people, your committee is the step in, where you have to get him in touch with the local community. You have to sort of hold his hand throughout the process, because he's obviously grieving, he's obviously doing his own thing. So it's skills like that, and it's sort of pressure that you're put under, that you're going to get put under later on in your career in different aspects, but it's then, and it's a good way to learn those skills. It's a good way to learn how to handle yourself under pressure, because you come from a very sheltered life, where I lived a sheltered life. I lived in East London, and nothing majorly went wrong in my life, apart from one or two things. But then from there, you're on your own at uni, and you're having to deal with stuff, and you're having to deal with pressure. It's an eye opener, and that's one thing that you won't get if you're not involved with societies, Islamic societies, or other even general, because you sort of put in situations where you wouldn't be normally, and that's where you learn about yourself.
Yeah, I feel like I was just thinking about how I wasn't really aware of ISOCs and whatnot, but I did kind of know about the reputation of back in those days. It's kind of died down a bit, or maybe it's because we're removed from that setting, so I don't really care as much, right? The whole thing about extremism on campus and prevent. So
Yeah,
that was for me, I don't know, we never really had any issues, obviously, but there's certain experiences that you see. It's a weird experience for Muslims, say from like the Indo-Pak background that go into university,
yeah,
from the perspective of the positives of meeting loads of different people, but also you meet loads of people from who are practicing from different schools of thought, like
yeah,
from within the four madahibs, right? But even
yeah,
let alone that, you might have certain Salafis or literalists and all the rest of it. Now, I think one thing that maybe FOSIS, which is like the body that oversees all ISOCs, right? There should be within their kind of welcome pack. I don't know, maybe they don't do that because it might seem a bit divisive, but there should be an onboarding kind of process that helps people understand, because then a lot of times the young Muslims who have done practices in Islam for the whole life one way, they kind of completely lose track, and they kind of think that whatever they've been doing was wrong, where it wasn't kind
yeah,
of based, and then they're attracted to this kind of more simplistic or black and white
yeah,
kind of procedure. um, but then really, as you gain more knowledge, you realize that that's actually the minority, but they seem to have more of a presence on certain campuses, and I think that's
yeah.
something that can cause issues for people. What do you think? What do you think about that?
I think so. In terms of like going back to earlier, so we had a prevent officer at our university. We did. I don't know if you met her or not, but she was always constant presence, because she cancelled a lot of our speakers as well, that we tried to get
Yeah,
involved.
that's one
Yeah,
of the main kind of
yeah,
step-in kind of things that
yeah.
happens.
But I think you're right. I think you are right, because I came from that. I had only one sort of view of Islam, because that's the only way I've ever been taught, and I thought that was the right way. And then I come and
Mm,
then I met you, and then I was like, oh wait, there's a different type. And then obviously
mm,
Salim and Saj, they had their own sort of. It wasn't significantly different, but it was
mm,
like those little things, like and then you sort of go into uni, and then you meet some other guys, and then you're like, okay, and I think you're right. I think if you're not careful, there is a slippery slope there to be had, because if our ISOC was dominated by a sort of particular mindset, then we would have been drawn. We would have been sort of like said, okay, the way you've been doing it isn't the best way, but this is the best way. And we were young, impressionable kids. We are 18 years old. Like, at that time, any
yeah,
sort of new information is a revelation.
yeah,
And oh my God, this is like amazing. This is new. This is amazing. Whatever. This is it. And I think as well, especially 18 to 21, that's where you sort of fully form your views as well. Like your outlooks
mm,
on the world, sort of thing. Obviously, some people, they evolve and they get change constantly, but for a lot of people, 18 to 21, where a lot of the ideas are entrenched.
Yeah.
I think we were lucky in that regard because our sort of Islamic society wasn't like that. It was a mix. There were people from everywhere, and we were lucky to have that.
Yeah, it's good in a way, but I feel like
You need a mix so that you're aware of it, but you need to make sure that no one is dominant over everyone else. I think that's the key, because if one is dominant, because I know there are issues, and I think if you look at Bradford University is a great example of this, where by our third year or second year, there were 4 or 5 ISOCs in that university, because one would became dominant, the sort of lesser dominants made
yeah,
their own ISOC, and then you
and
have
then
4 or 5,
yeah,
and there's a whole
uh,
mess there. At the
and then
time, it was
obviously some of them, they have that view that you can't talk to people of the other school or whatever else, so then that
yeah,
facilitates the creation of more and more.
yeah,
And
and
but
then yeah,
one
there
thing,
was a case, because I don't know if you remember, there was a puritanical
yeah,
ISOCs trend going on as well for a time, because
one
of ISOCs like that.
yeah, one thing that I just mentioned here is there's one organization that I study with as well called iSyllabus, right?
Yeah,
They've recently developed a partnership with, I think it was 30 ISOCs. This was like in September. I don't know where it's gone, but I thought that was amazing because basically it's the Fard al-Ain course plus more their first year is, and that's what they were offering to these students. That would be the perfect kind of neutralizer, because that gives you an underpinning in all of these kind of, it gives you an underpinning on obviously the Fard al-Ain, but also like
yeah,
the science of hadith, like how they're ranked and the different books, and
yeah,
you also see where the differences come out from, how it's just a slight different interpretation amongst the
yeah.
schools of a certain
I
hadith.
think one thing I would say to that is that if I was running an ISOC now, I wouldn't want to overwhelm first years with sort of
Yeah,
knowledge
because
that
most of them
strict
don't
like that.
care in it,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah,
There's that as well.
exactly. Because I think you want to give them that cultural awakening, but you don't want to get
Yeah,
into the sort of science behind it yet. Because as well, like their first year students, some of them have moved out, some of them, and then some as well, like they get overwhelmed by their own course. Like they need to figure out where they stand in life. And I think one thing is that you don't want to push Dean on anyone. That's always been my thing, because if Dean is always something that is your own personal thing, if you push someone into it, they can go in, they can come out. That's it. But if they go into it themselves and they go into it with good intentions, then they're going to stick, and they're going to stick for the long term. And I
yeah,
think if you sort of like, if as my role as an ISOC president, I force people into Dean and to study Dean when they're not really 100% into it, then I'm doing more harm than good.
yeah. But again, I'd say perhaps it's different for those who are more heavily involved, like the committee members and stuff. Maybe they should take a more of an active role in
Yeah,
learning certain things, right?
I think so.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah, I think so. I think so.
da'wah,
I
it's
think
like
yeah,
there's
if you
different
are a committee
approaches.
member,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's different approaches, because I like to say lifestyle da'wah, where you need to be living in a way that's attractive to other Muslims. Not, I was saying how, for me, there's big studies behind this and the causes of radicalization and stuff that we don't really want to get into, but just from personal experience, and again, as kind of members of the ISOC or the committee, you're going to experience different interactions with a wide range of students, and you kind of get an insight into their psychology and way of thinking. I've always thought that there was one particular brother once that I was able to witness his transformation. So he went from someone that wasn't practicing at all
yeah,
to practicing, I'd say practicing in inverted commas, but a very kind of, he took on that very literalist kind of approach where
yeah,
he was telling, like telling you to grow your beard, things like that, right? Which
yeah,
is fair enough, because you can't really say that's wrong.
yeah,
And then also choosing not to come to certain events because he thought there was free mixing there, things like this, right? Which 2 weeks ago wouldn't have mattered at all. And then there was that incident that kind of stuck with me, and I still use it as examples now, because I feel like that was the critical juncture, and that happens to a lot of people. if you get them within that time period
Yeah.
where they're kind of just they've suddenly transformed and they've got that youthful zeal and energy and enthusiasm for the deen, right? If they get tutored by someone or they
Yeah.
become friends with decent people, Muslims, good kind of Muslims, they'll go down a certain path. But if they fall into the hands of someone that's maybe not as good, or someone with kind of more
Yeah.
these ideas that can be harmful, whatnot, then they're
Yeah.
in the danger zone of kind of slipping into that.
Yeah.
Because
No, no, definitely agree.
yeah,
I think
and then
that's where ISOC should step in, and I feel like so that was just our first year, wasn't it? First to second, so it
no,
wasn't
this
something
was
that we
this
were
was second year, I think.
yeah. So then this is again something that I think we should have done something. We should have done more. I think looking back on it, because I feel like
Mm,
it is dangerous, isn't it? Because if someone is left to their own devices in that situation, as well, you're looking at a time where I think the YouTube echo chamber phenomenon, I guess, in a way, or the sort of
yeah,
social media phenomenon was sort of starting to come into proper effect, where
yeah,
once you have your mindset and once you have that online, then that's it. That's all you're ever going to see. You're never going to be approached with different viewpoints. You're never going to be approached, or you're never going to have to sort of. And I think that's where, if you know, then it's up to you to sort of. Because at the end of the day, I think. So my view is anyway that sort of diversity makes it better. There are different opinions, and there's nothing wrong with that.
mm,
To say that one opinion is, and it's there to a certain extent. Like obviously, that the four madhabs are the four madhabs, and there's nothing wrong with the four madhabs. You can be one madhab, and you don't have to. So you can't, because I've met people that say, okay, one madhab is right and the other one is wrong, and it's like, and but it's yeah, like there's some that sort of you need to sort of appreciate the differences between, I guess, as
yeah,
long as you're sort of
yeah,
being final, sort of like the kalima is the kalima, and like, because obviously there are some that disagree on that as well. That's where you sort of draw a line. But
mm.
yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that.
I was just about how I would say if you come across someone that you feel is kind of in a danger zone in terms of going down, mixing with the wrong crowd and getting dangerous ideas or whatever else, right?
Yeah,
I think a lot of it, if you try and boil it down to like the psychology of it, a lot of it is we deeper issues like traumatized past and stuff. Oftentimes there's a big transformation involved where they've suddenly decided that they want to become the best practicing Muslim that they can, right? So they
yeah,
suddenly jump ship and there's a massive identity change in it. So they suddenly
yeah,
become the practicing guy. They
yeah,
suddenly become the guy that's like, you know, visibly the Muslim guy and he's going to be strict in everything. That causes a massive kind of psychological crisis for them. But in a way, I think it's the same. It's the same appeal to get rich quick schemes.
yeah,
And I'll tell you why. Because it's like you're getting promised from zero to hero. You know, like
yeah,
these ideas, like oh, we can go to a different country and fight or whatever else. It's like
yeah,
you're being promised to go from your current status of like nothing, and you might be
yeah,
neglected at home, and you might not have been loved or whatever else. Then
yeah,
you're getting promised of like this tribe of people that are like lifting you up as like the brave hero, like this guy, he's the crazy one, he's gonna do this,
yeah,
and then that builds them up. It's like a get rich quick scheme because then
yeah.
think about
No,
it,
no
if
way.
you believe it completely, you think you're gonna go to paradise if you do this
Yeah,
thing. It's like, what the heck am I doing here? I
yeah.
might as well just it's quick paradise.
No,
It's that same psychology, isn't it?
yeah, no. I mean, that's throughout history. I mean, you could go back to Crusades, and it's the same sort of principle where you know live a life of sin and go Crusades, and you go to paradise straight away. But I think it's a bit more than just a get rich quick scheme. I think you're looking at sort of young guys, and I think this is more for the guys as well. It's more, in my opinion, it is more sort of for men. I think actually no, that's not true. I think scratch that. I think is both men and women. I think at that age, 18 to 19, 21, you're moving away from home, you're going to university for the first time. There is a crisis of identity. There's a massive crisis of identity, and that in that crisis of identity, it's what fills the void, and what fills the void is whatever you can find online. And it's fundamental. I think for me, it's like obviously you've got the get rich quick scheme, so this is answering you. This sort of option is giving you the quickest answers. It's giving you sort of the biggest hope, and it's a very dominant thing online. So it's a very easy thing to find online. They're not finding anything else there. I mean, they are, but it's like what's shouting loudest, what's giving you the most. It's the get rich quick schemes. It's the best marketed.
Yeah.
Money is that I think everyone has that sort of crisis of identity, especially if you're coming from a sort of British Asian or British African or British, if you're sort of coming from that background where you're not exactly British, but you're not exactly from back home. You're not exactly, and you come in and you're a Muslim, but you're not exactly a Muslim because, there's so many different types of Muslims. So then who are you? What are you? Where do you fit in this world? And I think that's a normal question for anyone to have. Where do you fit in this world? Who are you? And you're right. It's like if you go on that and if you look for something, you're going to be naturally attracted to the get rich quick schemes because they're the best marketed.
Yeah. But then I was also thinking about how even in this situation, I think this might have had an effect, right? So this particular incident that I'm talking about is that a way of addressing it is one strategy that they use is the otherization of everyone, right? So it's like everyone else is weak. They do this, they don't have the courage. It's the underlying kind of message there is like they don't have the courage to do what we're going to do, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
To like be like us and we're going to do this and that. I think if you pair these people, so in an ideal world, you'd psychologically assess them, right? And you'd pair these people with true worshippers, like true abid, like, people who, because then what will happen is their underlying assumption that they're more practicing or they have more zeal for the deen and they have more courage to practice it, right? That gets attacked in a kind of peaceful way, basically, because if they're paired with someone who's legitimately practicing, and I'm talking on the level of like voluntary fast, tahajjud, going to the mosque in the morning, and they're also on it in terms of everything else, manners, things like this, that person will have the realization sooner or later that this person, he's pretty on it and he doesn't have these same ideas that I have. So
I don't know if I agree with that. I think if you've got someone that's entrenched in that belief and you pair them with someone that's a true, like, even if you put him with the imam of a mosque who lives by those ideals, or even if you put him with an imam of, like, put him with Mufti Menk, or put him with like the sort of imam of the sort of the Kaaba.
no,
Like,
that's
you put him with,
different
okay,
because
so
they'll otherize them easily. I'm talking
yeah,
about someone like an ordinary kind of person, but
like the
like a proper,
ordinary. So I was saying that the local imam of the mosque, the ordinary guy, sort of living life, or one of the guys that's regular at the mosque or whatever. I think they'll just have their. I don't think that they'll change their minds very quickly. I think for them, it's not about their belief. They're like sort of more closer to Allah or whatever. I think you're right. It is a get rich quick scheme. I think in that regard, then you're sort of going against your point where you say that these people, they're sort of attracted to that. They want quick justice and they want to be better in it. They want to show that they're better than who they are. Because if you're showing that you want to get rich quick and you want to be better than everyone else, then it doesn't matter what the other person does. You have to justify your point of being better.
But
So
why
showing someone that is like, really strong on deen, then they're going to say they're not doing enough for deen because they're not willing to give their life for deen.
No,
That's the
that's where I
justification.
kind of disagree, because that's where I was going to finish with my kind of analogy, is that after they'd realize that if this person practices life was the right thing to do, right? Like, let's just assume it was like a international scholarly verdict that would never kind of happen, but let's just say it does, right? They know that this person would be the first to do it, because if they're willing to struggle this much, they can't match them. Like this, think about it, it's this newly practicing kind of guy who's got these fanatical ideas. and he's paired with someone, and he sees him, befriends him or whatever else, right? He's paired with someone that's literally like proper, like he can't match him in terms of like worship and in terms of learning about the deen, and like he's be sending him WhatsApp messages at 3 o'clock when he finds a new quote and stuff. So sooner or later, this fanatical guy, he's gonna think, damn, this guy is on it. So why is he not doing it? If he's willing to like sleep 4 hours
I
and
don't
pray
think.
and stuff, why is he
I
not
think.
willing to? And then
I
it'll
think
cause
you're
this
giving him too
cognitive
much credit.
dissonance.
I think you're giving him too much credit. I think if you're that young and if you've got that sort of belief entrenched, I think this is me just being candid. I don't think a lot of people have. I don't think they're going to critically think like that. I genuinely don't think that. I think if you're already entrenched in that belief and you have your mind set on that, then I think you're going to use anything to justify it. I think it's the same way. Like it's hard. Like in this current age, how hard is it to win an argument with a left wing or a right wing or whatever? Because their views are entrenched. It doesn't matter what logic or whatever you use. There's always going to be a shifting of the goalposts. There's always going to be a shifting of the goalposts.
I guess it's a numbers game. You're not going to get everyone. You're probably not going to get
Yeah.
most people. You'll get a minority, I guess, which is better
Yeah,
than nothing.
minority.
You know
You
what I
get a
mean?
minority. I think in today's age, it's very hard to logically win an argument. I think it's very hard to change someone's mind through arguing or through that. I think it takes a lot more than that, and it takes a lot more sort of extreme. I don't know how it would be. Like, I'll be honest, I'm not offering a solution. I'm not offering.
Yeah, neither was I. I was just kind of just running through something I've been thinking about. Obviously, these ideas with podcasts, sometimes what people have to bear in mind is they're not necessarily, you're just kind of thinking as you speak kind of thing, right? But one thing I wanted to move away from this topic because it was just supposed to be like a passing little bus stop kind of thing, right? So I wanted to get on to the next thing. Another thing I was thinking about before was that, do you reckon if you were to do a poll of like, or poll of like, all the kind of executive committee members of ISOCs in the last 10 years, or let's just say the president, there's not much attention to this, but like companies, and obviously there's not Muslim companies, that there's not that many Muslim companies that would do this kind of thing. But essentially they're picking the talent, if you think about it, because it's like with anything else, you know how like these Eaton and certain companies, they look for people who have showed a desire to have responsibility at an early age, whether that's like head boy and all the rest of it and these kind of things.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing, because say if I had a company and I wanted to employ people who, instead of just starting at ground zero, I'd start with something like that, because you're already filtering out people, you know, people that put themselves up for responsibility, they develop these skills. So I think there's like a potential talent pool out there that isn't fully kind of.
I think it is being taken advantage of. If you look at sort of the Islamic charities and how they work, and sort of you look at the last 10 years and you look at the sort of ranking guys that have gone on and moved on, and then you look at sort of the last 10 years of charity recruitment in terms, because as well, like one thing I will say, and this is an off point in terms of like charities and sort of the bigger charities, you have to think of them as businesses, because at the end of the day, the more money they make as a business, the more money they'll sort of do. So think of it like that. And I think they are recruiting people from Islamic Society backgrounds because they know that they're, you know, good people and they're talented people. And you do see it, because I know so many from our generation, before our generation, even after, that have gone on to work for them as proper employees, not volunteers, but as proper employees.
That's a good point.
Even like sort of like you go back to sort of the national head of fundraising is a former president, Islamic Society president, but there's so many across the country, so many. And I think because they're sort of exposed, so the charities are exposed to them because they work with each other quite a lot. That's quite nice. Whatever you just did now.
That's quite good. I got it from my guy that designs the thumbnails, isn't it?
Yeah, I think zoom in with that. I think that's quite nice.
Yeah, but then when I edit, anyway, get back to it.
Yeah, but no. So I think because they're exposed, so they already have access to talent because they're already working with them through charities, through Charity Week and etc. I think you're right, though. I think there is a sort of talent pool out there, and I think I think it comes down. I think a lot of it comes down to now is like when you obviously some people put in the CV, some people don't about putting this being an executive position. I know other
Yeah, I was going to
societies they
ask you
sort of
about
do look
this.
at them. So like the Law Society,
Yeah.
so they like employers do look at stuff like that and sort of look at what responsibility you took. Islamic
Mm,
Society, some people do appreciate it. Some employers don't really care about it. But I think it's up to the sort of potential employee to explain that, you know, I was this, these were the responsibility, and this is how, like, you know, you're selling yourself in it. So you have to be honest, but also sell yourself. So
yeah.
explain your responsibilities, because a lot of people
Mm,
see Islamic Society, they don't know what that means unless they've been part of it.
yeah. Is that thing of when it comes to selling, you have to present it in the best possible light in terms of
Yeah.
aligning it with whatever the incentives are for whoever you're presenting it to, right? So
Yeah.
recently I was on this podcasting course. They were talking about how to get sponsors for your podcast, which is by Freshly Grounded, who I rate a lot, the guy behind that.
Yeah.
Um, so, and he was talking about vanity metrics in it. And
Yeah.
obviously, from one perspective, if someone's not in the whole marketing scene, you'd think it looks a bit silly because you're just like bigging yourself up, kind of thing. But you have to think from the perspective of who you're approaching and what their interests are and what their
Yeah.
incentives are. You know what I mean? If you just say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I've got a podcast and it's targeted towards Muslims, and inshallah we get rewarded for it," right? You should sponsor my
They
podcast.
don't care.
Now,
They don't care.
in the kind of
No.
spiritual, feel good, airy fairy world, that might feel all right. But
Yeah.
and to be honest, with certain guests and stuff, that definitely does work. Like even credit where it's due, people like Daniel Hay Hadju and Gabriel Romani, they didn't care about the numbers or
Yeah.
anything because obviously we hardly had any.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when it's a business, it's completely different because obviously
No. A
their
business is
objective
giving
is
you
to make
money.
money. Yeah,
Like them two sort of they're great, and you know, alhamdulillah, they did it. But at the end of the day, they're just giving you time. And they're
yeah,
giving you an hour here or an hour or two there.
yeah.
It's great. But you know, if I'm giving money is completely different. And if I'm
Mm,
giving you money, I want something in return.
yeah.
I'm not going to
Okay.
give free money.
So we've had about 47 minutes. Just going to finish off with the last kind of topic. To be honest, this is a good chance to kind of catch up as well. I don't know, because
Yeah.
you get to have I've seen other podcasters do this, right? And it's because you get to have a bit more of a deeper conversation than you might
Yeah.
ordinarily have, right? But you're
Yeah.
also kind of talking to someone that you're friends with or whatever else. So
Yeah.
but anyway, there has to be some underlying value as well, and I think we've touched on a
That's
few
it.
good topics.
If there's value, then that's great. If otherwise, what's the point in it?
Yeah, unless
I'm
you
not
make
gonna.
it like some people have them kind of just chatting podcasts in it, which is fair enough
Yeah.
as well. There's a different place for it. All right, so I wanted to end with this, right? So after university and stuff, so this is unrelated to the ISOC thing. This is just more about careers and stuff. So you went into journalism, right?
Yeah.
So
Not straight away. Not straight away.
mm,
So if I speak candidly, I'll just speak about my sort of career post university. I think I'll be honest with you, and I'll say when going into university, I didn't know what I wanted to do long term. I had no idea. I think the initial plan was do the degree, then do a law conversion course, become a lawyer, sort of thing. That obviously didn't happen. After my degree finished, I applied to a number of different things. I think predominantly, though, I did apply to journalism because I had that as one option in my mind. But the first role I got was sort of radio production with BBC. And then immediately after that, I got a role as working on a documentary. So, you know, the TV documentaries that you see. So it wasn't journalism straight away, it was that. And then from there, I did a sort of documentary. Then I worked on Bite Size. So people that remember Bite Size,
mm,
physics
yeah,
and
I
history,
remember that.
that's all me. GCSE physics and history. Then
So
after
the kind
that, I
of areas
went,
are in it in a way,
huh? Yeah.
if you think about it. Depends on your intention to it.
College.
If you did it
No,
because
no, it was good fun. It was really good fun. That.
yeah,
No, it's good because you sort of like you learn. Because I used Bite Size as a kid, and I remember how valuable that was for me. So for me to do that for the next whoever, Plus, I learned a lot then. You'd be surprised how much you learn while you're doing this stuff.
Mm.
But yeah, then after that, I went into journalism properly. And then I became a journalism and still am a journalist now. So that's the brief history. And yeah, it is completely and
But
utterly
like a logical
un-Asian.
progression of what you
Huh?
is more of a logical progression of going from one job, seeing another opportunity, and kind of just jumping onto
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I think I'd say that there was never there's never been a fixed end goal. The end goal has always changed because obviously as you learn new skills and you learn new parts and aspects of roles, you realize that there's something else that you want to do. And it's
Yeah.
never just this is what I want to do, that's my end goal. No, it's like actually I've learned this now. I've realized this as a thing. So now I actually want to do something else. And that's always the case. I think even now, so like now I'm in a role which I'd absolutely love. And I think 10 years ago, if you offered me this role, I would have ripped your hand off.
Yeah.
But even now, I'm like looking at this and I see this is not the end goal, but I've learned stuff from this. I love doing this now, but now I've got a new end goal. And then it's always good to have that development as well in yourself. Never be, not so much never be content with where you are, but also look ahead and sort of plan ahead and realize that, learn what you can from here, look to move on sort
Yeah.
of thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and get better. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But no, you're right in straight away in terms of this isn't a typical Asian sort of pathway. I was lucky my parents were really sort of like flexible. They were quite happy for me to pursue what I wanted to pursue. Even with my degree, I did philosophy, politics, economics, so completely un-Asian. I think there was concerns when I did philosophy because you do get that sort of you hear stories about other people studying philosophy and losing deen. But we had conversations around that before I started, but that was all fine.
Mm.
And then with the work, it's been really interesting and it's been weird, I guess, because there's been a lot of like learning curves in
Yeah.
different aspects and different roles.
Yeah. That's the key, in it. Just having that mindset where you're constantly learning and improving on your skills and stuff, and linking everything back to the start in a way, right?
Yeah,
Is that being involved in something like the ISOC, it puts you on that path earlier than having to do it when you're in the job market, meaning like acquiring
yeah,
new skills, doing
definitely.
something that you might find uncomfortable, but you understand that
Definitely.
that's the way the world works. As in, if you want
Yeah,
to progress, if you want to improve in anything, that's basically the formula, isn't it? You have to
yeah,
kind of keep doing that and repeating it and having that
yeah,
growth mindset, instead of having a fixed mindset where you think that you can't build new skills or you can't
yeah.
kind of develop and improve. But yeah, I think we'll kind of bring it to a close there. So alhamdulillah, I think that was quite good. What do you think?
I
I
think
don't
it's all
know.
right.
Yeah, because obviously I wanted to test out my new setup and stuff as well. I'm not saying you were a filler guest, but I thought it's a good opportunity to kind of have a discussion and also touch on something that's quite kind of important and something that people can benefit from, in it.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot more to say. I just feel like I think
Yeah, especially on the career side. I might have another interview with you about all that.
yeah, even with the ISOC
Willing
stuff,
to Are you
yeah,
willing
I'm up
to
for it.
expose who you're working for so I can put it in the title and thumbnail and get bare views?
I don't think you're gonna get many views, but yeah, I do
No,
work for
no, but
BBC.
no, but I could just put something like former ISOC president to BBC journalist, something like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get.
go for it.
I don't know how many people. I don't know how that would rank in the search rankings anyway, because who searches for that? But still,
No, but
but
yeah,
that's
no,
true though. It's not like that. That's what
yeah,
it
no, it
is.
is true. BBC
Mm,
journalist, former ISOC president. Yeah, that's
mm,
true. I've worked. Yeah. Um, but yeah, no, definitely would do more on the career because I think there's a lot sort of there to unpack, I guess.
yeah.
Especially sort of post bite size till now. I think there's a lot.
I know, and that's what people are interested in. That's part of obviously the Optimized Muslim project in a way as well, right?
Yeah.
But I always say, at least at this stage, I want to focus on the other kind of side of things,
Yeah,
more kind of like the spiritual kind of. I always say when like kids ask me or whatever, right, nephews and stuff like that, I always say spend your 20s focusing on the things that money can't buy. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
obviously you need the stability in terms of career and stuff, but I feel like there's already enough out there on all of that.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I think I agree.
So
I think
yeah,
what I would have wanted to do more on, I guess, and maybe this was for another, but in terms of ISOC, I think that's sort of different because not everyone is religious and not everyone is on Deen, but being part of ISOC made me sort of more, it kept me closer to it where I could have been pushed away, I guess. And
yeah,
I think it's
yeah,
that where ISOC isn't just for people that are religious. It's not. It's for anyone that is a Muslim. Because
yeah.
we had other brothers as well, and thinking that that they're not religious at all. They have absolutely no inkling towards Deen, but
You
just
can't
being
say
part of that.
absolutely.
Uh, okay, I won't say it, but read between the lines. There was none, but no, just being part of that sort of community, I guess, being part of it and being close to it meant that they weren't driven away completely. And it meant for those 3 years where they were living away from home and that, and it's you're not just there for the aspect of Deen, you're there for the community, you're there for the other brothers, you're there for exposure to sort of like different mindsets, and you're there for the sort of networking, you're there for the learning of skills, learning how to public speak and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah,
which is great. But I think biggest reason people join ISOC is community, and that's
yeah,
one thing I
true.
think that you need to learn from Dean as well is
Yeah,
the power of community, and I guess
yeah,
because it's all great. The spiritual stuff is great. The
yeah.
actual Dean stuff, prayer is great, but masjids were initially community centers, weren't they?
Yeah, that's
They
definitely
weren't.
important. Obviously, even in these kind of secular studies, it
Yeah,
comes up when, in terms of studies that show populations that live longer and groups that live longer and
yeah,
stuff, they say one of the main kind of longevity factors is
yeah,
sense of community and quality of relationships, isn't it? And
yeah.
say if you're part of something like that, then that's obviously beneficial. So I think we'll close it there. So, Amir, Jazakallah khair
Sure.
for taking time out and talking to me.